p.m. and this public hearing is officially called to order. My name is Pat Harris, and I'm a member of the North Carolina Environmental Management Commission. I've been designated as the hearing officer for this 15A NCAC 02B Surface Water Quality Standards Triennial Review Rulemaking. If you are having technical difficulties with WebEx, you can use the chat feature in WebEx to ask questions or seek assistance. You can also view the public announcement for this hearing, which is a link on the Department of Environmental Quality's Public Notices and Hearings website for instructions on various ways to connect to WebEx and for the WebEx phone number and access code for this hearing. This public hearing and comment period are being held in accordance with the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, or the Clean Water Act, which requires states to review and revise surface water quality standards to protect aquatic life and human health, and under the authority of the North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 150B-21.2. In accordance with the North Carolina General Statutes and federal regulations that govern this action, a public notice of this hearing was published in the May 17, 2021 edition of the North Carolina Register. Notice to the public was also provided through the division's website, and a press release was issued by the Division of Water Resources on May 17, 2021. The purpose of today's hearing is to obtain public comment on the proposed amendments to Rules 15A NCAC 02B, .0202, .0208, .20211, .212, .214, .216, .218, .219, .220, .301, and .311. The fiscal note prepared for this proposal, variances to the water quality standards, and other topics including, but not limited to, EPA's 2013 Aquatic Life Ambient Water Quality Criteria for Ammonia, Freshwater, EPA's 2015 Human Health Criteria updates, including updated exposure factors and updated criteria for 94 individual substances, EPA's 2018 Final Aquatic Life Ambient Water Quality Criteria for aluminum, statewide adoption of EPA's 2012 Recreational Water Quality Criteria using E. coli as the pathogenic indicator organism for Class B waters, contaminants of emerging concern like PFAS and pesticides. In a moment, Chris Ventilaro, a Division of Water Resources staff member, will review this proposal for you. There is additional information available on the Department of Environmental Quality's Public Notices and Hearings webpage that describes the proposal. A written record of this hearing will be prepared that will include all relevant comments and discussions. For this reason, this hearing is being recorded. Written comments received by August 3rd, 2021 will also be included in the record. Based on the public comments received by August 3rd and input and review by the comments by myself and the Division of Water Resources staff, I will make a recommendation to the Environmental Management Commission after the record is complete. In making the final decision, the Environmental Management Commission will consider the written record, the recommendations of division staff, the recommendations of the hearing officer, and any concerns of other commission members. The recommendation for this proposed rule may be to adopt it as proposed or to adopt a modified version of this proposal. The Environmental Management Commission may adopt the recommendation, modify it, or reject it. If the Commission wishes to adopt a rule that differs substantially from what has been published in the North Carolina Register and proposed this evening, it must first publish the text of the proposed different rule and accept comments on the new text. So at this time, I would like to recognize government officials that are registered for tonight's hearing. We have former North Carolina Senator Harper Peterson. We have the Water Resources Chief Officer, Mick Nolan, with the Fayetteville Public Works Commission. We have the former mayor of Pittsburgh, Cindy Perry. We have Senator Kurt DeVere with the North Carolina State Senate. We have Commissioner John Bonnets with the town of Pittsburgh. We have Pittsburgh Town Manager Chris Kennedy, and we also have Commissioner Kyle Shipp with the town of Pittsburgh. Now, I'd like for Chris Ventilaro will present a brief overview of the proposed rule changes. After Chris's presentation, comments from the audience will be allowed. So it's all yours, Chris.
All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Harris. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Ventilaro, and I am a Water Quality Standards Coordinator with the Division of Water Resources. So what I wanted to do tonight was just provide a brief presentation covering, just touching quickly on the various amendment topics that are part of this triennial review. So I'm going to turn off my video and share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this okay. So again, thank you for attending this public hearing tonight for the 2020 through 2022 Surface Water Triennial Review Amendments to select rules in 15A NCAC 02B, 0200, and 0300. Before I go into the actual amendments, I just really wanted to touch quickly on what surface water standards are and the process by which we go through to adopt them into state rule. So surface water standards are basically numeric and narrative language that serve to provide protections for North Carolina surface waters against the deleterious effects of pollution. And to adopt these standards into rule, we do what's called a triennial review process. And you can see a real kind of abbreviated process here on this slide, and it really goes through 3 different stages. We have a development stage, a state approval stage, and a federal approval stage. So for the development stage, DWR staff review existing standards and stakeholder feedback from previous triennial reviews, as well as new like EPA guidance and scientific literature. And then we take all of that information and we put together a package, the triennial review package, to present to the Water Quality Committee and the EMC. That kind of brings us to the state approval side of things, where we publish a notice of text in the North Carolina Register, we hold public hearings, and then the EMC kind of considers the proposed amendments and determines what amendments will be adopted into the state rule. Following that, the package then goes to the Rules Review Commission for approval on more of kind of a legal basis, and then it eventually gets signed off by the North Carolina Attorney General. And then that whole package, that triennial review package, once it's signed off by the Attorney General, then goes to EPA, to the federal EPA, to review, do a Clean Water Act review of the contents of that package to make sure that they meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act. As part of this, the EPA also works with other federal organizations to basically kind of figure out if there's any other concerns related to the Endangered Species Act that need to be considered. Once this review is completed, North Carolina is then notified of any approvals or disapprovals of the proposed triennial review changes to the standards. So we began this triennial review with a large list of topics for consideration, which you can see here. Staff reviewed each of these water quality topics, consulted with various branches within the division, and also met with department leadership to narrow down the water quality topics into a priority list for this triennial review. The narrowing down of topics was deemed necessary for a few reasons, such as the complexity of the individual topics, the need for further scientific and cost evaluation, as well as consideration of just logistics. And the development of those priority topics included considerations of human health and aquatic life protections, water quality improvements, public interest, the capacity to implement, existing EPA national recommended water quality criteria, and also fiscal components. And also I wanted to really point out that, although not all of these topics are included in this current triennial review, we are still seeking public comments on all of these topics, and we'll consider those comments for future triennial reviews. This brings us to the topics that we are proposing as part of this triennial review package, and you can see kind of a brief list of them here. They include both aquatic life and human health protections, as well as some technical corrections and definitions, and I'll touch on each of these in the following slides. We'll start with 1,4-dioxane. So this is a contaminant of emerging concern in North Carolina. We currently have numeric criteria calculated per Rule 15A NCAC 02B 0208 for both fish consumption and water supply protections. The goal of this triennial is to codify these values so that they could go through the public hearing process and ultimately appear in the 02B 0200 rules as adopted water quality standards. The values to codify are fish consumption of 80 micrograms per liter and water supply of 0.35 micrograms per liter. For cadmium, the goal of the triennial review is to replace the existing freshwater and saltwater cadmium standards with the updated information provided by EPA in 2016. It's important to note that the freshwater standards are not specific numeric values, but rather they are the hardness-dependent dissolved metals calculations that you see in the table here. So basically the way this works is that a water hardness value is determined, and then it gets plugged into these calculations, and that calculates the actual numeric value that will serve as the water quality standard. Now, the saltwater standards, however, are not hardness dependent, and they're adopted as the specific numeric values of 33 micrograms per liter for acute exposure and 7.9 micrograms per liter for chronic exposures. For selenium, the goal of the triennial review is to replace the existing freshwater selenium criteria with the updated EPA criteria from 2016. The focus of this criteria is on the bioaccumulation of selenium in fish reproductive tissues, which can result in adverse impacts to egg development, embryo development, and offspring survival. The criteria is kind of unique in that it places emphasis on the use of fish tissue data along with water column measurements. And you can see that here. This is the criteria that is proposed. So when fish tissue data is available, it will be given a higher priority for determining impacts to the aquatic life use. That said, when no fish tissue data is available, the water column concentrations will be used to make that determination. The water column values also differ depending on the degree of flow, and I'll provide a definition of lentic and lotic in a few slides. But in general, bioaccumulation tends to be more significant in slower flowing waters. And this update also replaces the analysis of total recoverable selenium as the basis of the standard with the analysis of dissolved selenium. For cyanide, the goal of the triennial is to include the option for using the free cyanide analytical method for analysis of cyanide. The current standard was written to only allow for the measure of total cyanide, and that was because at the time, while the EPA criteria was established for free cyanide, which is the more toxic form of cyanide, there was no EPA-approved Clean Water Act analytical method for free cyanide. So what was adopted instead into rule was the cyanide standard for total cyanide. However, a Clean Water Act approved method was published in September of 2019. So providing this option to analyze for free cyanide kind of gets back to the original intent of the published EPA criteria, and also provides a more accurate measurement of the toxic form of cyanide. And it's worth noting here also that adding free cyanide as a method does not change the numeric value of the standard. Next up, we have the site-specific recreational criteria. The proposal for primary recreation is to replace the existing Class B fecal coliform standard with EPA's 2012 recreational criteria using the E. coli indicator organism, but this would only apply in the 19 counties that make up the Asheville Regional Office. But it's important to note here that the department's intention is to have this be the initial step in a statewide rollout of E. coli recreational criteria. And this rollout will occur over time as the department develops the capacity to implement this criteria throughout the state. And you can see the proposed E. coli criteria here. And again, just to stress that this would only apply as a site-specific standard in those 19 counties that make up the Asheville region. So here we have a change to some of the classifications language. This is a change to the language in the O2B 0301 rule. And it has to do with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. EPA had granted the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians with treatment as a state status in 2015. Because they now have treatment as a state status, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians has established their own water quality standards program, which became effective March 28th, 2019, and applies to the waters within their boundaries. So for North Carolina, this means that the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians now has jurisdiction over those waters within their boundaries. So the changes to the rule here reflect that we are treating them as we do other states that we share a border with respect to unnamed streams that enter into the Eastern Band of Cherokee land boundaries. Now, the changes to the rule here could be seen highlighted in yellow and are underlined. We have two new definitions and a clarification of an existing definition. The lentic and lotic are the new definitions that are specifically related to the updated selenium criteria that I mentioned earlier. Lentic means an aquatic ecosystem with standing or slow-flowing water, such as a lake, pond, or reservoir, while lotic means an aquatic ecosystem with rapidly flowing water, such as a stream or river. And the clarification is for the industrial discharge definition. And this definition, it's an existing definition that's being clarified in response to public comments made during the last training. And then we also have a few technical corrections for the water supply rules. These proposed changes were previously approved of by the EMC in March of 2020. However, the Office of Administrative Hearings informed us at that time that the two changes would not be considered technical corrections as they define the term, and that we would need to take these through the full rulemaking process. So we're including these clarifications in this triennial review to satisfy that Office of Administrative Hearings requirements. And then the final technical correction is for some text that was unintentionally left out of the O2B 0311 rule. And you can see the text that is underlined and highlighted there. It just consists of that WL. And this correction makes this unique wetland consistent with the other unique wetlands that are listed in this sub-item. So basically all the other unique wetlands have this WL before the UWL, and it was just accidentally left out in this case. And we are also seeking public comment on the regulatory impact. This regulatory impact analysis was approved by the Office of State Budget Management on February 11th, 2021, and it provides an analysis of the quantified and unquantified direct and indirect impacts associated with the proposed rule amendments. And then lastly, this slide goes back to some of those additional topics that we weren't able to get to in this triennial review, but that we would like to receive public feedback on during this comment period. And then I just want to touch on the estimated timeline for the 2020-2022 triennial review. And the thing that I want to point out here is that the public comment period began on May 17th and will end on August 3rd. So please submit any further written comments to us by August 3rd. And my final slide here will provide the mailing and email addresses that you could use to submit your written comments to. And with that, I thank you very much for your time tonight. And I will turn this back over to Commissioner Harris.
All right, thank you, Chris. The Environmental Management Commission wants to hear your comments on the proposed amendments to the 15A NCAC O2B rules, the fiscal note, variances, and other proposed topics. All interested and potentially affected persons or parties are encouraged to make their opinion known to the Commission, whether in favor of or opposed to any or all of the provisions of the proposed rule. Please know that your comments are important and will enable the Commission to act in the best interest of the public. Please also remember that the intent of this hearing is to solicit your comments on the proposed amendments to the surface water quality standards, the associated fiscal note, variances, and other proposed topics. It is important that you keep your comments concise and relevant to these topics. It is critical that we have time to get all your comments on the proposed amendments, its fiscal note, variances, and other proposed topics, and we'll hear them first. Then, if you have other comments that you believe should be voiced to the staff or to the hearing officer, we will try to give additional time at the end of the hearing for those comments, or you can contact staff after the hearing with those comments. We will now accept comments from the audience. I will call on speakers in the order that you registered for this hearing. If you have joined the hearing by phone, press *3 to raise your hand, speak once called upon to do so, and press *3 again to lower your hand. If you have joined the hearing online, press the hand icon to raise your hand, speak once called upon to do so, and press the hand icon again to lower your hand. The WebEx host will unmute each speaker when it is their turn to speak. I will also state the name of the next speaker in the queue so that individual can be prepared when their name is called to speak. Please do not start speaking until the WebEx host has indicated that your microphone has been unmuted. If I call your name but cannot hear you after you have been unmuted, please check to see if you are muted on the WebEx screen on your computer. If you are having audio issues, try a different method of audio connection within WebEx or use the Call Me feature to have WebEx call your personal telephone line. If I still cannot hear you, I will proceed to the next registered speaker, but will call your name again at the end of the hearing. When your name is called, please clearly and slowly state your name and any affiliation with an organization you may be representing. If you have written copies of your comments, we would appreciate receiving a copy of them. We may question speakers if necessary to clarify or learn more about matters as they arise. After all the registered speakers have had an opportunity to comment, any registered speaker who could not previously be heard will be called upon to speak. In addition, anyone who did not register to speak or desires additional time to speak will have the opportunity to comment. Please remember, the Division of Water Resources staff can be contacted after the hearing to address any additional questions or comments that you may have. Because we have a large number of people who have requested to speak, it will be necessary to impose a time limit of 2 minutes. A member of the Division of Water Resources staff will be timing the comments, and you should be able to see them on your screen. We appreciate your cooperation with this time limit so that everyone who wishes to speak is able to do so. So I will now call on the first speaker. Again, as a reminder, all speakers will have 2 minutes to comment. So the first person I have on my list is Callie Wood, a Lee County resident. And after Callie Wood, I will be calling on Callie Moore with Mountain True.
Hey everyone, my name is Peter Johnson. I'm the WebEx host. Just a quick reminder here, The way I'm calling on people is I have a list of everyone who has signed up, and I can see your names if you signed in with your names. If you called in on the telephone, as I see about 10 of y'all did, I just see you as a call-in user, so I don't know who you are. So if your name gets called and you are on the telephone, if you would please press *3 on your phone to raise your hand so that I'll know who you are, and then we can call on you when it's your turn. And then when you're done talking, please press *3 again to lower your hand. And Commissioner Harris, I do not see Callie on the list. However, there is a call-in user 6 who has their hand up, so I will go ahead and unmute call-in user 6 to see. Call-in user 6, you're unmuted.
I'm not. I just got unmuted, so I am not that. I am Jennifer Caldwell.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
I am registered. I did register.
All right. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay. If you could please press *3 to put your hand down. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I am not seeing Callie Wood, and nor do any of the other call-in users have their hands up.
All right, thank you, Peter. All right, our next person will be Callie Moore with Mountain True, and Marita Powell, who is a resident of Currituck County, will follow.
Callie, you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I'm Callie Moore. I'm the Western Regional Director for an environmental advocacy organization called Mountain True. We serve 26 counties in Western North Carolina and North Georgia. I want to thank you, first of all, for including the E. coli recreational standard for the Asheville Regional Office area. Since the ARO already has the capacity to monitor E. coli and actually has already been doing so, we just really appreciate you not holding up the development of this standard until the rest of the state is able to catch up with that capacity. So we believe that because E. coli is a species of fecal coliform that is specific to fecal material from humans and other warm-blooded animals, and that since EPA recommends E. coli as the best indicator of health risk from water contact in recreational waters, that this is a very important step for NC Division of Water Resources to take. Many other states have already developed an E. coli recreational standard. And again, we just appreciate the responsiveness of North Carolina to doing the same thing. While we're happy about the decision to go ahead with the development of the standard, we would really like to see E. coli standards developed for all waters, since there are many waters in Western North Carolina, and I'm sure in other places across the state down the road, where people swim that are not currently classified for primary recreation. Some examples of this in my area are the Hiwassee River between Lake Chattooga and Hiwassee Lake. So the two lakes are classified B, but the river is not. And there's actually a Mission Reservoir that's a small lake that's in between the two. The Hiwassee River is heavily utilized for recreation, including swimming. Fires Creek, Tusquity Creek, several other large streams, and many other places, like I said, across Western North Carolina. So if we're going to develop a recreational standard, we'd like to see it applied everywhere people are actually recreating, regardless of whether or not it's actually received the B classification. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that we also support the codification of standards for the 1,4-dioxane, which is a carcinogen for fish consumption and water supply. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Okay, so I have Marita Powell up next, followed by Leona Wichard. So Marita Powell, are you here tonight?
I do not see Marita on the list, but call-in user 5 has their hand up. So call-in user 5, you are now unmuted.
My name is Pris Endo. Am I user number 5?
Yes. Okay.
I speak on behalf of the Cape Fear group of the Sierra Club.
Oh, we were.
If you,
What?
yes, we're looking for Marita Powell, who is the next person registered to speak. So, Peter, I guess I'll move
Okay.
on to the next one. And we'll come back around. If you're registered, we'll come back around and there'll be time at the end as well to speak. Okay.
All right. None of the other call-in users have their hands up, and I do not see Marita on the list.
All right. So the next person I have is Leona Witchard, followed by Stephen Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper. So Leona Witchard with the Church Women United Chapel Hill Carrboro Unit.
I do not see Leona on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
Okay. Then we'll move on to Stephen Pulliam. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Dan Riverkeeper, followed by Jillian Howell, Pamlico Tar Riverkeeper. So.
Stephen Pulliam is not on the list, nor do any of the call-in users have their hands up.
All right. Then we will move on to Jillian Howell, Pamlico Tar Riverkeeper, followed by Emily Sutton, Hall Riverkeeper.
Jillian, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Jillian Howell. I'm the Pamlico Tar Riverkeeper with Sound Rivers. I'm also a member of Waterkeepers Carolina, a network of 15 riverkeepers statewide that work collectively to ensure our waters are fishable, swimmable, and drinkable for all North Carolinians. Many of us will be speaking here tonight due to the importance of the triennial review process and our water quality standards to the health of our waterways and communities. I wanted to take my time to address what has been left off the list of update recommendations during this year's process. In order to adequately protect our waters, additional updates beyond those proposed by the MC are necessary, and I'm going to focus on 2 of them. First is related to bacteria. The MC has proposed using E. coli as the pathogenic indicator for Class B waters in the 19 counties in the western portion of the state, replacing fecal coliform. E. coli has been the standard recommended by EPA for nearly a decade to ID fecal contamination in recreational waters. So this would mean North Carolina would be using best available science. However, it should be extended to all surface waters statewide. It doesn't make sense to prioritize or have a partial rollout in a certain region over the rest of the state, especially when recreation and contact with waterways is happening everywhere. The second issue I want to address is nutrient pollution. There are no recommendations on the table for statewide numeric nutrient criteria, but I want to emphasize how much of an oversight this is given the extent of nutrient pollution across the state. We know that nutrients, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, are ending up in our waters from many different sources, including stormwater, sanitary sewer overflows, and industrial animal agriculture. In the tar PAM specifically, since at least the 1980s, excess nutrients have impaired the water quality of the tar Pamlico estuary, leading to algal blooms, low dissolved oxygen, and fish kills. It's expected now by us as advocates and community members out on the water to see fish kills on the Pamlico in the late summer and early fall. But just because they're expected and regularly happening, it doesn't mean they're normal and they're a sign of our waters in distress. It's past time for the EMC to consider adopting numeric nutrient criteria. Thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to speak here tonight.
Thank you. All right. The next person I have up is Emily Sutton, Haw Riverkeeper, followed by David Caldwell, Broad Riverkeeper.
Emily, you are now unmuted.
Members of the Environmental Management Commission in North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. My name is Emily Sutton, and I'm your Haw River Keeper with Haw River Assembly. The Haw River and the Cape Fear watersheds have gained national attention for toxic contamination by industrial discharges. These contaminants are persistent and toxic and have been found in downstream drinking water supplies and levels far exceeding all health guidances. By omitting PFAS limits and allowing high concentrations of 1,4-dioxane in surface waters, these proposed water quality standards will continue to leave communities across the state vulnerable. The lack of meaningful standards to regulate PFAS compounds in surface water after years of data collection and public outcry is further contributing to the public's general distrust of our agencies to prioritize the health of our communities over the interests of industrial polluters. This proposal should include a standard of no more than 20 parts per trillion for the class of PFAS compounds in all surface waters. The proposed revision to codify the in-stream target values of 0.35 micrograms per liter for 1,4-dioxane for water supply watersheds is a positive step. This target value, based on the existing narrative water quality standard, has been repeatedly criticized for not being an enforceable standard. Enforcement of a 0.35 microgram per liter standard for this persistent toxin is long overdue. However, this proposal would allow discharge levels of more than 200 times higher than what is considered safe for downstream communities. Relying on dilution of 80 micrograms per liter in non-water supply watersheds is unreasonable. We support the clarification of the existing water quality standard of 0.35 micrograms per liter of 1,4-dioxane in this rulemaking, but the EMC must ensure that this policy is paired with enforcement and action from NCDQ that is designed to meet the standard. We recommend setting a standard of 0.35 micrograms per liter in all surface waters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have David Caldwell, Broad River Keeper, followed by Hartwell Carson, French Broad River Keeper.
All right, I see David Caldwell. You should now be able to speak.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. I'm David Caldwell, your Broad River Keeper with Mountain True. Since this review is not only to discuss water quality standards, but also classification of water bodies, here's a thought. Having two different standards for Class B and Class C waters is kind of like saying, the air over here isn't being breathed by many people, so we don't care if it's polluted. Well, all air is potentially breathed, as all waters may be used for recreation, and all waters are interconnected. So it's important that all waters be protected equally. If this is not possible, then at least we should be able to make a case for the reclassification of water bodies that we believe are being used for primary recreation. You know, everybody's talking about equity. One example of the problem with use classification and this being viewed through an equity lens. In my watershed, the Broad River, there are very few water bodies that are classified as B waters, most notably Lake Lure and Lake Summit. Both are very exclusive with limited access. While at our most used access point on the Broad River Greenway in Bowling Springs, the classification is C. There are more people who swim here at the Greenway than probably any other place in Rutherford and Cleveland counties. It is definitely where you would find the most underserved and diverse group of people found in the water. Yet it is not protected to the extent that a mostly private and exclusive small lake in the hills is. There's something wrong with this picture and it's time to fix it. There's another body of particular concern. The First Broad River is also a seawater, but recreation is increasing rapidly. We have a Carolina Thread Trail where kids go swimming, a very popular access at Double Shoals, and a Greenway coming to Lawndale soon. From a 2008 DEQ water quality planning report, quote, nearly 26% of samples collected exceed 400 colonies of fecal bacteria per 100 milliliters of water. Current methodology requires additional. Yeah, I'm a slow talker. Appreciate y'all having me.
All right, thank you so much. All right, now we have Hartwell Carson, French Broad River Keeper, followed by Kemp Burdette with the Cape Fear River Keeper.
All right, I don't see Hartwell on the list. Colin user 5 has their hand up again. I know we called on that person earlier. Colin user 5, you were unmuted. I know you spoke before. I didn't quite catch your name.
My name is Pris Endo.
Chris Endo.
Pris.
Oh, Chris Endo. I see.
P-R-I-S.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chris. We will come back to you. If you could please press *3 on your phone to put your hand down, I would appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So again, none of the other call-in users have their hands up, and Hartwell is not on the list.
All right, thank you. All right, the next person will be Kemp Burdette, Cape Fear Riverkeeper, followed by Katie Hunt, Lower Neuse Riverkeeper.
Kemp is not on the list, nor are any of the call-in users' hands up.
Okay. All right, the next speaker then will be Katie Hunt, Lower Neuse Riverkeeper, followed by Edgar Miller, Yadkin Riverkeeper.
Katie, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Katie Hunt. I am the Lower Neuse Riverkeeper for Sound Rivers, and I am also a member of Waterkeepers Carolina. And I want to talk about the E. coli standard being adopted in only the western portion of the state and not the entirety of North Carolina. It is long overdue for North Carolina to adopt E. coli as the pathogenic indicator of all surface waters. The current standard of fecal coliform is inefficient in properly helping protect the public. As mentioned before, exposure to water contaminated with E. coli bacteria can lead to serious gastrointestinal and other health issues. People all over the state of North Carolina are at risk when recreating on their waterways. The proposal to include protective limits on E. coli in the westernmost 19 counties is not enough. It is foolish because bacteria does not only exist in the West. Likewise, recreation on our waterways does not only exist in the western portion of the state. Furthermore, many of our low wealth and minority communities reside in the other 81 counties. Do they not also deserve the chance to protect themselves from E. coli bacteria? Favoring one small section of our state's population flies in the face of environmental justice. Clean water, but clean water for all. For years, riverkeepers across the state have sampled for E. coli bacteria, and their sampling efforts have clearly demonstrated bacteria is a statewide problem. They've also demonstrated that it's a process is entirely feasible, but it is necessary and appreciated. I personally have received a lot of feedback from the residents in the communities I serve who've expressed gratitude and appreciation for our sampling program. I've heard time and time again that it is important to our community to know where it is or is not safe to recreate. The waterways of North Carolina belong to all of us, and the right to clean water belongs to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have is Edgar Miller, who will be followed by Jefferson, I hope I'm pronouncing Curry, with the Lumber River Keeper.
Edgar, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Edgar Miller, and I'm the Yadkin Riverkeeper based in Winston-Salem. In addition to supporting the establishment of statewide E. coli standard, a cumulative standard for PFAS, and the recreational use standard for 2 common cyanotoxins, I will focus my comments on the proposed revisions that would allow compliance with the cyanide standard to be based on the measurement of free or total cyanide, particularly as it relates to ongoing concerns with Alcoa's Baden Business Park. Hazardous waste disposal sites at Alcoa's Baden Business Park continue to leak cyanide and fluoride into Baden Lake and Little Mountain Creek. As recently as April of this year, Alcoa reported exceedances in monthly averages for both cyanide and fluoride at one of their outfalls under their current stormwater permit. We are concerned the proposal in the triennial review will make it easier for Alcoa to comply with its permit limits in the future and be less protective to the environment. Rather than making this an either-or proposition, the proposal to allow the use of either a free or total cyanide measurement should be changed to require the measurement of both free and total cyanide to ensure the greatest level of protection for public health and the environment. YRK supports measuring free cyanide to ensure we are testing for the most bioavailable and potentially toxic forms of cyanide. At the same time, we feel it is important to maintain the total cyanide measurements to ensure continuity and consistency with current permit conditions and historical monitoring data. Total cyanide is what is used under the existing permit requirements, and the rules should not change under existing permits. Finally, we are concerned about what methods are being used by Alcoa and other permittees to measure total and free cyanide. The current proposal does not specify what methods will be used for testing cyanide and if there are certified labs available in or out of state to conduct this analysis reliably. Current detection levels on Alcoa's discharge monitoring report show lower levels at less than 6 micrograms per liter, which is currently above the standard. Thank you for your time, and we will be following up with additional detail in our written comments.
Thank you. All right, Jefferson Curry, Lumber River Keeper, followed by Matthew Starr, Upper Neuse River Keeper.
Jefferson is not on the list, nor are any of the call-in users' hands up. And I do not see Matthew Starr either.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I know hopefully I won't mess the name up too much. Kara Schildneck, Waccamaw River Keeper, and again, followed by Kimberly King.
Kara, you are now unmuted.
All right. Hey, that was a great pronunciation of my last name. My name is Kara Schultneck. I'm your Waccamaw River Keeper, and I work with Winyah Rivers Alliance, and I'm also a member of Water Keepers Carolina. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to address the proposed use of E. coli as a fecal bacteria indicator. While we are thrilled to see the proposed change, we would suggest making the change statewide for all waters. As the Waccamaw River Keeper, I cover a 1,600 square mile watershed in coastal North Carolina and South Carolina. And as a bi-state river keeper, consistent water quality standards are important for evaluating the health of the Waccamaw River. Fecal bacteria is one of the best standards for recreational waters and for all waters in terms of health. Fecal bacteria contamination presents a major human risk for recreators and can cause gastrointestinal illnesses, eye infections, and skin irritations. There are a number of indicator species that are used as proxies to evaluate health risk, but the EPA has established E. coli as the best indicator species for evaluating potential fecal bacteria contamination. The current standards for fecal contamination in the recreational waters differ greatly between states. North Carolina uses fecal coliform, while South Carolina uses E. coli. The establishment of a statewide E. coli standard as the pathogenic indicator in all surface waters would allow for consistency in evaluating the river's health. Education around recreational water quality health is complicated enough. On the Waccamaw, we have clean water, but without the data and corresponding state standards, it becomes more difficult to really express that. So a consistent water quality standard across the entire state and across state lines would really help to clarify how clean our waters actually are. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have Kimberly King. Will be followed by Savannah Artusi. So, is Kimberly on?
Kimberly is not on, and none of the call-in users have their hands up, but Savannah is. So Savannah, you are unmuted now.
Hello, my name is Savannah Artusi. I'm a policy fellow for the North Carolina chapter of the Sierra Club, and I'm here to represent our nearly 100,000 members and supporters who care deeply about water quality and public health. Thank you for holding this hearing. As a North Carolina resident, I enjoy swimming in our many lakes and rivers, so water quality standards are very important to me. Unfortunately, while some important changes have been proposed, the updates to water quality standards do not adequately address toxic chemicals like PFAS and 1,4-dioxane that threaten our waters and our health. I urge the EMC to set a protective class standard for PFAS, lower the allowable concentration of 1,4-dioxane, and require DEQ to improve enforcement of chemical release violations. PFAS are a family of toxic and possibly carcinogenic chemicals, yet the proposed standards do not address them at all. PFAS are known as forever chemicals because they can remain in the environment for tens, hundreds, or even thousands of years. When ingested, PFAS can accumulate in the body and have negative health effects. PFAS contamination is widespread in North Carolina, but there are no standards in place to control these chemicals or to protect residents from them. The EMC should adopt a class PFAS standard for North Carolina and require the use of control technologies to protect our water. 1,4-dioxane is a byproduct of many manufacturing processes and is another chemical that takes a long time to break down. It is toxic at very low concentrations, causing liver and kidney damage and increasing the risk of cancer. Yet the current surface water quality standard for dioxane is 200 times higher than what DEQ considers safe to drink. The EMC should lower the allowable concentration of dioxane in surface waters to protect our health. Finally, because dioxane is so often used in manufacturing, there are many opportunities for contamination to occur. The EMC should require industries to remove dioxane from their wastewater and to report any discharges of the toxic chemical. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I again encourage the EMC to improve its proposed water quality standards to address the threats of toxic PFAS and 1,4-dioxane.
Thank you. All right, here. The next person I have is Hannah Nelson with Southern Environmental Law Center, followed by Stephen Guletis, and I don't have an organization. So with that, Hannah Nelson.
Thank you for
Hannah,
the
you are
opportunity to
unmuted.
speak. Oh, awesome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Hannah Nelson, and I'm an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'd like to take a couple minutes to discuss the proposed water quality standards related to 1,4-dioxane, a toxic chemical that's present in many of North Carolina's water bodies. While this rulemaking is a step in the right direction to addressing North Carolina's 1,4-dioxane pollution, there are a few things that the EMC must do in order for the standards to adequately protect North Carolina communities. First, the EMC must acknowledge that the 0.35 micrograms per liter standard for water supply waters is already the law under the Narrative Toxic Substances Standard. While we appreciate EMC's willingness to memorialize this in a numeric water quality standard, any rulemaking should be accompanied by immediate enforcement of the existing law. For instance, the EMC should direct DEQ to begin to include necessary permit limits to meet the standard in NPDES permits issued for discharges of 1,4-dioxane. Second, the extremely high 80 micrograms per liter standard for non-water supply waters is not likely to protect downstream communities, and instead the EMC should adopt a uniform standard of 0.35 micrograms per liter across all waters. The 80 micrograms per liter standard allows incredibly high discharges of 1,4-dioxane, possibly allowing dischargers to release the chemical at levels over 100,000 times higher than what DEQ considers safe to drink. This is a huge problem because 1,4-dioxane does not break down in the water, and throughout the state, many non-water supply waters flow into drinking water supplies. High discharges of 1,4-dioxane allowed by the 80 microgram per liter standard might also prevent compliance with the water supply standard of 0.35 micrograms per liter. If this is the case, and it cannot reach compliance with the downstream water quality supplies, it would be a violation of the 2B rules. We recommend that the EMC apply the 0.35 micrograms per liter standard across all waters, and thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments.
Thank you. All right, Stephen, and I apologize in advance, Guletis. And the next person following Stephen will be Elizabeth Onan with Protect All Children's Environment.
Neither Stephen nor Elizabeth are on the list, and none of the call-in users' hands are up.
Thank you, Peter. All right, the next two folks I have are Dr. Lorraine Kramer, a citizen of Pittsburgh, followed by Jennifer Caldwell with Protect, let's see, that's Baden Lake. So Dr. Lorraine Kramer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here as a citizen of Pittsburgh. I've lived here for 20 years. I also have a PhD in microbiology and immunology. I was also a part of the Pittsburgh Water Commission put together by Mayor Nass. I've listened to the experts at these meetings. Dr. Detlef Knapp from NC State tell us how they've been following ongoing spikes of these toxins in our waters for months and years. This has been going on for years. We listened to Dr. Linda Birnbaum talk, she's the expert from Duke, tell us about these forever chemicals because they cannot be removed from our environment. Even with filters being removed from the environment, they are removed, put into a landfill, and those forever chemicals simply re-leach into the water systems that we drink and use and play in. I've listened and discussed these toxins for over a year regarding their hazards to human health. I've lived here for 20 years and I felt safe because I had a filter on my fridge, which was supposed to reduce all these chemicals from the water. And then in these meetings, I found out that these filters only reduce by these chemicals by about 15%. So I'm still drinking 85% of the chemicals found in my drinking water. I had to buy a $400 reverse osmosis filter system, but this filters my water, not my neighbors who are 80 and have to drink the water coming out of their spigot. The thing is Greensboro doesn't have to drink the water that they're polluting because they take their water upstream from where they dump this stuff into our water. Please stop allowing these companies to use our waterways as their garbage can and force me to drink their pollutants in my water. Please have them remove these. I know that you're trying to limit them, but I would like to see them eliminated completely from the source. Thank you so much for your time and allowing me to speak my concerns.
Thank you. All right, the next person we have is Jennifer Caldwell, Protect Baden Lake, followed by Emily Donovan, Clean Cape Fear.
Hello, my name is Jen Caldwell. I am the chair for Protect Baden Lake, which is a grassroots community group. And I'm also a concerned community member that lives on Baden Lake. Hazardous waste disposal sites at Alcoa's Baden Business Park continue to leak cyanide and fluoride, among other chemicals, into our recreational lake, Baden Lake, and Little Mountain Creek. As recently as April this year, Alcoa reported exceedances in its monthly average for both cyanide and fluoride at the Outfall 5, which is currently under the NPDES stormwater permit. As a community, we are very frustrated and confused as to why the Division of Water Resources has not taken enforcement action on what appears to be a clear violation. But we are also very concerned that this proposal in the triennial review to allow compliance by measuring either free or total is going to make it easier for Alcoa to just comply with its permit limits in the future. I am obviously not a scientist, but from what I understand, this current proposed changes to the ambient water quality for cyanide to allow compliance by measuring either free or total cyanide appears just to be another example of how the state is making a rule change just to make it easier for Alcoa to comply with its existing permit limits. Monitoring Baden Lake and Alcoa's discharge should never be about how we can make things easier or even cheaper for the regulated community. Rather, it should be about the protection of basic public health and the environment. Even the state's own regulatory analysis admits that allowing for the measurement of only free cyanide is less strict. Specifically, this proposal to allow the use of either free or total cyanide should be changed to require the measurement of both free and total to ensure the greatest level of protection. We support
Thank you.
measuring free in order to make sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have is Emily Donovan, Clean Cape Fear. And the next person I have behind is Lamisha Whittington, but I believe she put her comments into the chat box. And so I don't know if she's still here. So if she's not, Sanja Whittington with Democracy Green will be the next speaker. So Emily Donovan.
Hey, so I was told that this would be 3 minutes. I was able to get it to 2.5. Can you honor the 2.5 for me? I will go fast.
Well, if you can get it to 2, to be fair to everyone, and then if we have time, we'll go back around and maybe get the rest of your comment.
I'm gonna try as hard as I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here today because North Carolina is 4 years into one of the biggest PFAS contamination crises in the nation, and the EMC has somehow omitted establishing a surface water quality standard for PFAS. Somehow this feels criminal. I live in Brunswick County, and I know 7 people in my neighborhood alone who have suffered from rare, prolonged, or multiple types of cancer. The majority of these people are middle-aged, which is an important distinction. We feel younger age groups in our community are experiencing serious diseases and illnesses typically seen in more aging populations when compared to national averages. I work in New Hanover County, and I was a youth director for a small church for 6.5 years. Half of my students had a parent or sibling suffering from major health problems. Half. These teenagers ask me constantly why God would allow their families to suffer so much. I have witnessed firsthand how government inaction on PFAS directly impacts the spiritual lives of a lot of people I know. My husband is one of them. He developed a brain tumor 3 years after we moved to this area. He almost lost his eyesight. I know he wonders why he suffered so much when medical trauma when his identical twin has not. We can't help but notice his twin lives in a separate part of the state where there is no known PFAS contamination. We know PFAS exposures, even at low doses, are associated with serious health problems, including immune suppression, developmental effects during pregnancy or breastfeeding, and a number of cancers, including thyroid, kidney, bladder, and testicular cancers. I live in a confirmed thyroid cancer cluster. Failure to establish a PFAS surface water quality standard places the burden on innocent ratepayers and downstream municipalities when the burden belongs with the upstream polluters. A truly health protective surface water quality standard would be 1 part per trillion for the sum total of all PFAS. This is supported by the best available science on PFAS toxicity. Effective treatment technologies exist, and monitoring tests are commercially available to achieve this standard. Contaminated communities like mine have already paid too high a price. We are paying for water that still has some of the highest levels of PFAS in the nation per multiple studies. And until last year, over 30,000 public school children in Brunswick and New Hanover counties did not have access to PFAS-free water until my community action group, Clean Cape Fear, got reverse osmosis filling stations installed in 49 impacted public schools in those 2 counties. That's the real reason why I'm here today. I'm here to just beg. I'm begging you to implement a surface water quality standard for PFAS immediately. Do not be the reason why so many people question why God would be so cruel when this has nothing to do with God and everything to do with human inaction. Do we love North Carolina enough? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Lamisha Whittington, I believe, has left. Peter, do you see?
She has. She submitted her comments in the chat.
Gotcha. Okay, so Sanja Whittington with Democracy Green, followed by Harper Peterson, former North Carolina Senator.
Call in user 2, you are unmuted.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. This is Sonia Whittington.
Yes.
All right.
We can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you. Hello, my name is Sonia Whittington, and I'm the Executive Director with Democracy Green, a statewide org for environmental justice and democracy. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak out concerning highly fluorinated chemicals, or PFAS. PFAS are treasured by manufacturers for their grease and waterproofing elements, and the chemical industry is constantly searching for new versions. While convenient, PFAS exposure causes kidney and liver cancer, decreased fertility, increased incidence of thyroid problems, and decreased immune response to vaccines in children. Protesting on the residents of the Ohio River Valley in West Virginia, where they were systematically exposed to PFAS through intentional dumping of chemicals by DuPont. In North Carolina, we now see the same actions having been played out with Chemours' intentional dumping of PFAS chemicals into the Cape Fear River. As a result, North Carolinians have been exposed to this toxic chemical through their drinking water source. It is estimated that nearly 1/3 of Americans are drinking water that has been contaminated with PFAS, a number that is expected to rise as more drinking water systems are tested. Our water is also polluted through the use of firefighting foams containing PFAS and from repeated washing of clothing treated with PFAS. Drinking water in part of Brunswick County, North Carolina, is considered the most toxic in the whole United States. North Carolina ranks 3rd in the nation with PFAS contamination. Therefore, it is paramount that DEQ correct this oversight and ensure that PFAS and Gen X are added in this triennial review. Thank you for having the 1,4-dioxane listed, and thank you for your time concerning my presentation concerning the forever chemicals and the impact that it is having on North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person we have is Harper Peterson, former North Carolina Senator, followed by Mick Nolan, Water Resources Chief Officer. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Ms. Harris, and colleagues for allowing me to speak. My name is Harper Peterson. I'm a citizen of New Hanover County. I am surprised and perplexed that the PFAS family of chemicals has not been included. As Ms. Donovan stated, it's been over 4 years, June 2017, when the community, the state, was informed that for over 40 years, these chemicals were deposited in our river surface, our groundwater, and our air. The health risks are real and have been demonstrated. The linkage to cancers and thyroid disease is real, and polluters have not been held responsible. Over 1.5 million of my fellow Cape Fear citizens in the Cape Fear Basin have been exposed. We know what PFAS does, and we know to stop it, to stop the scourge, we need to know who is the polluters, what the extent of the pollution is, the extent of the health risks, and how do we clean it up. The legislature has taken action, appropriating millions of dollars to its collaboratory, our education systems. DEQ and the AG have taken a forceful response, as is appropriate. We have an ethical and moral responsibility to the citizens of this state, throughout the state, not just the Cape Fear region, to address these issues. We have to have PFAS included in this triennial proposal. We have to include it, and we have to include it at a level of 1.1 part per trillion, sum total. Anything else is unconscionable. We demand this inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Mick Nolan, followed by Adrian Ferris.
Mick, you are unmuted.
Good evening. My name is Mick Nolan. I'm a professional engineer and Chief Operations Officer of the Water Resources Division, Fayetteville Public Works Commission. Fayetteville Public Works Commission supports the Triennial Review, Surface Water Quality Standards Review, and renewal process, and appreciates this opportunity to comment. Specifically, we continue to be concerned about the elevated levels of 1,4-dioxane in the Cape Fear River Basin. 1,4-dioxane is a likely human carcinogen and does not readily biodegrade in the aquatic environment. PWC strongly supports DEQ's efforts through the triennial review process to move from a narrative standard for 1,4-dioxane to a quantitative standard. On behalf of our customers, we fully support adoption of the quantitative standard of 0.35 micrograms per liter water supply watersheds. There also must be assurance that any discharge of 1,4-dioxane protects downstream water intakes. PwC continues to invest in monitoring for this contaminant and looks forward to cooperatively working within the Cape Fear River Basin and DEQ to develop a management strategy to reduce 1,4-dioxane in our primary drinking water source, the Cape Fear River. We all must work together to develop an effective basin-wide strategy and timeline to reduce loading into our water supply. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person will be Adrian Ferris, followed by Brian Fields.
Neither Adrian nor Brian are on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
Thank you. All right, Deborah Stewart with the Grace Creek Residents Against PFAS in our wells and rivers, followed by Linda with Mothers for Safe Air, Safe Drinking Water.
Neither Deborah nor Linda are on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
Thank you. Next person will be Jamie White, followed by Barbara Swam.
Jamie is not on the list, but Barbara is, and I don't see any of the call-in users' hands up. So Barbara, you are unmuted.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Barbara Swam, and I live in Brunswick County, and I'm very concerned about PFAS and Gen X. I'm surprised that it wasn't on the Trineal, but I'd like it to be, and I'd like it to include 1.1 part per trillion, mainly because I think that anything more than that is just going to be really, really destructive. I would also like whatever standards to be used to include sediment testing in the rivers and tributaries, and also of the aquatic life. My understanding is that's a feeder system for, or nurseries for a lot of the creatures that we end up eating around here. And if it's in their systems, it's going to be in our systems. I've not gone with an RO system in my house. I buy bottled water, so that's expensive. I am going to end up paying the expense of having reverse osmosis water in Brunswick County because this hasn't been taken care of on a state level. And it's just all an expense for a lot of people who really don't need this on top of the contamination and illnesses that this is causing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next person on the list is Dr. Regina Smartin, Southwest Water Advocacy Group, followed by Dana Sargent with the Cape Fear River Watch.
Regina, you are unmuted now.
Thank you. My name is Regina Smartin, and I am a citizen of Holly Springs, North Carolina. I'm also the admin for the Southwest Wake Water Advocacy Group, SWAG for short. I started this group after the release of 1,4-dioxane in our drinking water in the Cape Fear River back in early 2020. And during the pandemic, I have now gained nearly 250 members to this Facebook group who are interested in learning about installing filters under their sinks. I myself was diagnosed with breast cancer in early 2021. Coincidence? Perhaps. I've been drinking Cape Fear River water for the last 10 years and lived in various locations up and down the river, including Fayetteville. And I am frustrated and irritated that we have not already passed a statewide surface water standard for PFAS collectively. And I also think that this 1,4-dioxane issue has gone on far too long. I fully support the statement that the Haw River Assembly posted online. I've reviewed it in detail. And I just want to state that the Cape Fear River Basin provides drinking water for 1/3 of the population of North Carolina, and it should be priority number one to keep that water clean. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Dana Sargent with the Cape Fear River Watch, and then Mary Scholler.
Neither Dana nor Mary are on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
Thank you. All right, next I have Brian Beauregard, followed by Virginia Radcliffe.
Neither Brian nor Virginia are on the list, and none of the call-in users' hands are up.
Thank you. All right, next I have Will Hendrick, North Carolina Conservation Network, and Don Williamson.
Will, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Will Hendrick, and I'm an environmental justice advocate with the North Carolina Conservation Network. I urge you to reconsider the proposed site-specific bacteria standard because it disproportionately deprives North Carolinians of color and low income of the protections that are proposed only for Class B waters in DEQ's Asheville region. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau demonstrate, for instance, that more than 91% of the residents of the Asheville region are white. In contrast, 66% of the residents of the state's other 81 counties are white. 6 different counties outside of the Asheville region each have more Black residents than the entire Asheville region. Similarly, 5 different counties outside of the Asheville region each have more Asian residents than the entire Asheville region. In fact, there are more than 6 times as many Black residents in Mecklenburg County and more than 6 times as many Asian residents in Wake County than live in the entire Asheville region. Tribal communities are also disproportionately unprotected by the proposal. Of the 8 state-recognized tribes located in North Carolina, only 1 is headquartered in the Asheville region. And because they are federally recognized, and as we heard earlier, were granted state status in 2015, that tribe is authorized to propose its own water quality standards for EPA approval. In other words, every tribal community, depending on the EMC for protection of recreational water quality, is left wanting by this proposal. The disparities in protection contemplated by this site-specific proposal will also adversely impact low-income North Carolinians, as the 10 counties in the state with the highest poverty rates are all outside of the Asheville region. In sum, whether distinguished by race, national origin, or income, it is clear that the most vulnerable North Carolinians are deprived of the benefit of the proposed update to bacteria standards. By prolonging the use of an outdated standard in the majority of our state's counties, this proposal will have the unintended consequence of perpetuating existing environmental injustices. The EMC should instead afford the same protection for recreational users of all fresh waters across the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have is Dawn, D-A-W-N, I know I have an Eastern accent, Williamson, followed by Jessica Merricks with the town of Pittsburgh.
Dawn is not on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up, but Jessica is, so Jessica, you are unmuted now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Good evening. My name is Dr. Jessica Merricks. I'm an assistant professor of biology at Elon University and co-founder of Clean Heart River, a local advocacy group dedicated to providing Pittsboro, North Carolina with clean drinking water. I've been a resident of Pittsboro for 2 years. We chose to purchase our first home and raise our family here because we were drawn to the small community that was surrounded by nature. When we arrived, no one told us about the high amounts of chemical contaminants in our water. No one told us that on any given day, our 5-year-old daughter could be drinking a likely carcinogen at the dinner table. We are concerned about the health risks posed by cooking, bathing, swimming, and gardening. We are expecting our second child, and we are terrified about the potential harm we may be exposing our unborn child to. Among numerous other health effects, PFAS has been linked to significant pregnancy and developmental complications, and 1,4-dioxane is a likely carcinogen. I am here because, like any other parent, I want to protect my children from harm. We are trying our best to avoid this water, but to do so is costly, inconvenient, and terribly unfair. Many states are starting to grapple with PFAS contamination. North Carolina must take action as well. I am shocked that PFAS is not included in this review process. I am requesting that PFAS be regulated as a class because there are over 5,000 types of PFAS. The PFAS class should be allowed to be no greater than 10 parts per trillion sum total. In addition, I am requesting 1,4-dioxane limits be set to 0.35 micrograms per liter across all waters in order to keep surface water cancer risk at 1 in a million per the Clean Water Act. Our town is currently following the 35 micrograms per liter in the midst of a dump that we just experienced earlier this month. This is unacceptable. Finally, too many North Carolina communities like Pittsboro are forced to take on the burden of removing these contaminants from our drinking water. Polluters are allowed to dump 1,4-dioxane at amounts of more than 200 times the proposed standards. Those chemicals flow downstream and pollute our drinking water. The EMC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm afraid your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will come back around. So if you have some more to add, we'll come back around. All right, the next speaker is Chris Endo. I believe that was caller number 5 from earlier with the Cape Fear group of the Sierra Club, and Steve Ronan, a concerned citizen.
Chris, you are unmuted now.
My name is Chris Endo. I speak on behalf of 1,350 members of the Cape Fear group of the Sierra Club. I comment tonight because, like the other residents of New Hanover County, we live at the mouth of the Cape Fear River and are beset with environmental degradation from coal ash, flooding, concentrated agricultural feeding operations, massive forest destruction for the production of wood pellets, and now PFAS chemicals in our drinking water. I lived in Ohio for 30 years and followed the reporting on PFAS contamination in Ohio and West Virginia. DuPont and Chemours plants were shut down, villages vacated, and millions of dollars awarded to victims of pollution from PFAS chemicals. Was I ever shocked when shortly after I moved back to Wilmington, Gen X was discovered too? Now the drinking water for 200,000 people on the Cape Fear River is polluted, and North Carolinians have the 3rd highest rate of PFAS exposure in the country. For this triennial review of the surface water regulations, I urge the EMC to support water standards for industrial chemicals that stop the discharge of PFAS chemicals into our water supply, and to adopt a health protective level of 1 part per trillion for the sum total concentration of all PFAS chemicals. And above all, because there are too many PFAS chemicals to regulate individually, I urge you to create a class standard for all PFAS chemicals. Members of the Environmental Management Commission, thank you for the changes you have proposed so far, but it is not too late for you to recommend stricter standards to protect water quality and public health in the Cape Fear River Basin. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have is Steve Ronan, followed by Katie Bryant with the Clean Haw River.
Steve is not on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up, but Katie is. So Katie, you are unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. I'm Katie Bryant. I'm a microbiologist and the co-founder of Clean Haw River in Pittsboro, North Carolina. Our main source of drinking water in Pittsboro is surface water drawn from the Haw River, which has a long history of being polluted by upstream textile industry and sludge land application from Greensboro, Burlington, and Reedsville. For 10 years, my family's been ingesting 1,4-dioxane via our drinking water. And to keep our children safe, the concentrations should have been 0.35 micrograms per liter, giving them a risk of 1 in a million for developing cancer. Instead, on average, every year, they've been at a risk category of 1 in 10,000. So they've been exposed to this carcinogen their entire lives due to the lack of regulations here in North Carolina. In fact, this July, we've been battling yet again another dump from Greensboro into our drinking water supply, and it's deplorable. We have levels of 543 micrograms per liter being dumped into the waterway, and they expect it to come down to Pittsboro, where our drinking water is pulled from this industry dumping into our waterway. They think it's supposed to be magically lower for us. This is the most ridiculous thing. To reiterate, we need water 0.35 micrograms per liter to make it safe for my children, and you're allowing industry to dump at 453 or 543 micrograms per liter upstream of me. What in the world? We need these regulations across the board, not at one location. We need them across the entire surface water. Secondarily, the fact that PFAS has been left off is ridiculous. Our blood serum samples here in Pittsboro are high above the national average. We're making national news. In 2018, NC State showed that our results collectively for PFAS were 1,000 parts per trillion. We are a community suffering from infertility, thyroid disease, and extremely rare cancers. It's ridiculous that I'm on here saying it again. We need regulations, North Carolina. The costs to remove these things are extremely high. You need UV advanced oxidation for 1,4-dioxane. You need reverse osmosis for PFAS. And you're expecting taxpayers to figure this out, for small towns to figure this out, how to get this crap out of our water. We needed action years ago.
Thank you.
I'm calling for 10 parts per trillion maximum collectively for PFAS and 0.35 micrograms per liter for 1,4-dioxane across all surface waters.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have is Laura Peterson, Pittsboro resident, followed by Nathan Schumacher.
Laura, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Environmental Management Commission, for holding this public hearing. My name is Laura Peterson, and I'm a resident of Pittsboro for the past 11 years in Chatham County. I'm on this call to ask you to consider all residents' health in North Carolina. My discussion is far less scientific than all of the other concerned citizens, but my concerns are real and valid. I ask that PFAS must be included as a set regulation as a class not to exceed 10 parts per trillion and 1,4-dioxane 0.35 micrograms per liter, not 35 as the town is currently doing. We have installed reverse osmosis in our home and whole house filtration to feel safe, but it's not even close to what we need for PFAS purification and does not help with the 1,4-dioxane at all. My family has been directly and seriously impacted by these toxins in our water. When you have one issue or two health-wise, you don't seem to link it, but when several things directly impact your family's health, it all comes together that it's very likely caused by these issues. We need the state's help. Pittsboro is working to implement RO, but that is not enough. This cost is being passed on to us, and we already pay the highest water rates in the state. As an example, our typical monthly water bill is around $400, and as of July 1st, our rates are going up 40% more through Aqua America, who handles our water. No resident can handle those kinds of bills for water that is the most toxic in the whole country. We love our home and our community, and we should not be forced to choose our home over clean water. Our children in this community have had a lifetime exposure to PFAS and 1,4-dioxane, and their entire life has been exposed, and most recently this dump in early July of 543 micrograms per liter. taking showers, baths, jumping in our pool, and drinking our water are not safe, and we should not be forced to move. We ask for immediate action now. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you. All right, next I have Nathan Schumacher, followed by Tom Vitiglione with North Carolina Child.
Nathan, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak today. My name is Nathan Schumacher, and I am a law student at Duke University and an intern with the North Carolina Conservation Network. I'm here today to urge you to adopt the EPA's 2013 National Recommended Ambient Water Quality Criteria for ammonia. According to the EPA, ammonia is one of the most important pollutants in the aquatic environment due to its highly toxic nature and ubiquity in surface water systems. Ammonia is a constituent of nitrogen pollution and enters the environment in a variety of ways. These include direct means, such as municipal effluent discharges, and indirect means like nitrogen fixation, air deposition, and runoff from agricultural lands. Ammonia is highly toxic to aquatic life. Exposure can lead to toxic buildup in internal tissues and blood and potentially death. The EPA's 2013 National Recommended Ambient Water Quality Criteria were devised to be protective of freshwater mussels. Freshwater mussels are particularly sensitive to ammonia. There are 7 endangered freshwater mussel species present in North Carolina waters. Additionally, the EPA's 2013 criteria are designed to protect the commercially and recreationally important rainbow trout, which can also be found in North Carolina waters. The 2013 criteria are pH and temperature dependent to ensure that species are adequately protected, given the varying characteristics of different waters. North Carolina is well behind other states and the science when it comes to ammonia criteria. 11 states have formally adopted or have adopted in practice the EPA's 2013 ammonia criteria, and an additional 16 states are currently proposing or have plans to propose the EPA's 2013 criteria for adoption. North Carolina needs to catch up with these other states and the science. That is why I would encourage the EMC to propose adopting the EPA's 2013 National Recommended Ambient Water Quality Criteria for the protection of aquatic life from the toxic effects of ammonia. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. All right, next person is Tom Vitiglione with North Carolina Child, followed by Kristen Pearson with North Carolina Black Alliance.
Neither Tom nor Kristen are on the list, and none of the call-in users have their. Actually, sorry about that. Call-in user 13, you are unmuted.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Who is this?
This is Kristen Pearson.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kristen Pearson, the Environmental Justice Associate with North Carolina Black Alliances, Western North Carolina Ambassador, and Democracy Green, and a native of Western North Carolina. PFAS has contaminated our communities across the state. While we've elevated numbers of contamination downstream of the Cape Fear River, it is affecting communities across the state. For example, fast food packaging and consumer goods are seeping into our groundwater in landfills that are right in our backyards. All North Carolinians deserve clean water. Thanks to science, we know that even the small exposure to PFAS can have grave health impact to our community in rural and urban communities, as health impacts have been tied to increasingly small exposures. While I'm bringing awareness to the entire state, our priorities today are our neighbors downstream. There is technology to keep PFAS out our water. The EMC should make sure that that is implemented. Too many North Carolina communities are forced to take on burden of removing PFAS from our drinking water. The EMC should ensure that the burden rests on the polluters and not the downstream utilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have is Dan George, Brunswick Environmental Action Team, followed by Chad Peterson, Chapel Hill resident in Pittsburgh.
Dan, you are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Dan George. I'm with the Brunswick Environmental Action Team in Brunswick County. Brunswick County, we are the last spot on the Cape Fear River Basin, so we get it all. Our main concern or deficiency we see in the proposals is the lack of testing for PFAS. I think it's obviously one of the biggest things we've got going on down here. I know that we've got a whole state to think about, but I'm a firm believer, as been stated by somebody else already, that all water is connected. And we are at the bottom of the drain. Harper Peterson stated also, we've got over 1 million people drinking this water, and the polluting that's gone on for decades and decades unchecked has been, the responsibility. There is no taking it back what we've already drank. We've already ingested. No telling. There's no telling because we never knew about it, because it was never tested for and questions were never asked. And I think that status quo is. It's time for a change in that, when we know about something, I think we need to test for it, because what happens is what's happening now is that we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on different water treatment plants down here that so far is going to rest on the taxpayers of this state and the consumers of this water. And there hasn't really been any accountability for the people that put it in there. And if we don't test for it, then we are not tracing the source. We are solely depending upon the utilities to take care of it. I feel like when we test. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Chad Peterson, followed by Colleen McDaniel with the Baden community.
Good evening. This is Chad. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're 11-year residents of Pittsburgh and Chatham County. While I peripherally represent large-scale retail interests whose tens of thousands of customers will ultimately be impacted by the current situation and hopefully its resolution, my concerns today and immediately are related to my health, my safety, the wellness of my family, my friends, my neighbors, and our community, everybody on this call, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all impacted, we're being impacted as we speak. Definitely appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to join, listen, and contribute. I'm not as close to all the details on the numbers. I just know that I fully support what our cohorts on the call are asking for as far as immediate strict standards. As far as Pittsburgh is concerned, it's concerning that we're only now at the point of taking this level of action, and that it took the recent Greensboro event to get to the level of concern, escalation, and action that we're seeing now. We've heard about the fact that not only my own family, but our other residents have children who have been consuming our water for the entirety of their young lifetimes. Long before this event, objective blood studies have been done through Duke, my own blood included, that talk about the direct impact and objectify it to the physical bodies of our residents. We have residents who have moved, relocated, spent tens of thousands of dollars to fix things that have not been fixed yet. Pittsburgh is primed to be one of the fastest growing communities in North Carolina, and it's not right to begin driving millions of dollars in commerce without our residents and businesses having easy access to clean water. I'm going to trust that our local and state leaders are going to focus all their efforts on addressing these issues today. I trust that those same leaders would be just as willing to drink and bathe in the water that thousands of us drink and bathe in every day. It's taken too long to get to this point. My question, our question, is when will my water be safe? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker I have is Colleen McDaniel Baden Community, followed by Buddy Henderson with the Grays Creek area.
Colleen isn't on the list, and no call-in hands are up, but Buddy is on. So Buddy, you are unmuted now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I'm disappointed that your review completely ignores the elephant in the room, PFAS contamination in North Carolina. As a resident of Cumberland County, the Grays Creek area, I know as well as DEQ that there are nearby creeks and surface water areas with extremely high concentrations of PFAS. Unless you work for the EPA, I believe that we are all past the point of denying the negative health effects associated with PFAS. This review claims that the proposed revisions will allow North Carolina to better protect human health and aquatic life. However, the regulatory impact analysis spells out the main goal, that is, changes to the standards are likely to result in significant benefits to a smaller number of local governments and private entities in the form of avoided costs due to reduced wastewater treatment and discharge monitoring requirements. In my experience, this sums up North Carolina's DEQ approach to environmental protection, which consists of deregulation and economic gains that trump human health, while other states and countries take meaningful action to stop PFAS pollution. In North Carolina, we're still enabling polluters. I urge North Carolina DEQ to adopt a surface water quality standard for PFAS as a class at a health protective level of 1 part per trillion for the total concentration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Mitch Ratner, followed by, I believe this is Ellie Klein, with the Women Organizing for Wilmington.
Mitch, you are unmuted.
Hi, guys. Good evening. My name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Mitch Ratner, and I live in Leland, North Carolina. My wife and I have lived here about 3 years, and we were extremely dismayed when we learned about the dreadful water quality that was running through our new home. I'm not a scientist, and yet I don't need to be to understand the harmful cancer-causing chemicals that have been dumped into the beautiful rivers of North Carolina by DuPont and Chemours and others. I find it hard to believe that the NC Department of Environmental Quality, in its triennial review, is neglecting to include standards for PFAS. Why is this? A CDC report from this year has found exposure to PFAS, even at low levels, can cause thyroid problems, fertility issues, and of course, cancer. Why is North Carolina reluctant to set meaningful standards about this? We need to start somewhere. It seems to me that our North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality has done little to help the citizens in our communities. Under your stewardship, the Cape Fear River has become the 47th dirtiest river out of 250,000 rivers in the United States. The $200,000 fine that was handed out to Chemours by North Carolina is laughable, given the amount of harm that Chemours has caused. Let us not forget that the NCDEQ took no action against pollution by Chemours until the Star News and some great investigative journalism forced the NCDEQ to finally do something. Where the heck were you guys at the NCDEQ when the PFAS problem started coming to light 10 years earlier? We cannot change the past, but we can look to the future. We need the NC Department of Environmental Quality to step it up and finally address the levels of PFAS in our water. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Ellie Klein, followed by Kathy Norton.
I believe Ellie is call-in user 11, and you are now unmuted.
Thank you very much. My name is Ellie Klein, and I urge DEQ to act on all the concerns and requests of previous speakers. I am a resident of Wilmington and a member of Women Organizing for Wilmington, which is a founding group of Clean Cape Fear. I was part of the ChemX and PFAS studies, and the findings were that the poisons in my blood and urine were off the charts. Since I moved to New Hanover County in 2004, in 2011, I was diagnosed with stomach cancer, a bad gallbladder, and then I got Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'm just one of the thousands of people who are dealing with poor health because of the poisons. Again, I urge you to listen to the concerns and the requests of the people who have been testifying before me. Oh, I forgot to say I also had tumors on both breasts. Anyway, this continues, and you must do something more than you're doing. And I thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Kathy Norton, followed by Marlene Barney with My Family and Community.
Neither Kathy nor Marlene are on the list, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
Right. Thank you. The next person I have is Richard Reynolds with the U.S. Army, followed by Cindy Perry, former mayor of Pittsburgh.
Richard is not on the list, nor are the call-in user hands up, but Cindy Perry is. And Cindy, you are unmuted now.
Thank you very much. I am Cindy Perry, speaking as a private citizen of Pittsburgh. I served as mayor of the town of Pittsburgh from 2015 to 2019. And although I'm not a scientist, I want to tell you about the deep impact that 1,4-dioxane has had on our town. In 2014 and 15, North Carolina state scientists told the Pittsburgh Town Board about the 1,4-dioxane in the Haw River, their public water drinking source. In the 7 years that followed, the state was painfully slow to act. University scientists, local officials, and community environmental groups, such as the Haw River Assembly, have pled for protection from the toxicity of 1,4-dioxane and PFAS compounds. In June, and again this month in July, massive discharges from Greensboro have again endangered our citizens. Over the 4th of July holiday, our town had to cut off water intake from the Haw River to dodge a large slug of 1,4-dioxane coming downstream. Due to the interconnectivity of our waters, the proposal that 80 micrograms per liter could be discharged upstream mistakenly presumes that by the time it reaches our intake, it might be 0.35 milliliters, the legal limit. Might is not a solution. State agencies such as yours was created to address problems across counties and municipalities with sensible statewide solutions. But where is the solution here? The children, the schools, the citizens, the vulnerable community here in Pittsburgh are all waiting for protection. 80 milligrams per liter of 1,4-dioxane is not a solution for Pittsburgh. It is a license to upstream cities to continue business as usual to Pittsburgh's detriment. The expense to the town has been vast and unfairly burdens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next speaker, and I apologize for the last name, Sandy Kayor, representing Brunswick County Family and Friends, and Joanne Leviton, the citizens of North Carolina.
Sandy is not on the list, and I see no call-in users with their hands up, but Joanne is. Joanne, you are now unmuted.
Yes, this is Joanne Levitan. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak at this hearing. I'm just a private citizen. I also live in Leland, North Carolina, in Brunswick County, and I am also very upset about the fact that there's no PFAS standards in this proposal. The forever chemicals, it's a family of toxins that circulate for decades in the environment, even as the health impacts have been tied to increasingly small exposures. PFAS contamination is widespread across North Carolina, and control technology exists to keep it out of our water. The EMC should make sure that it's implemented. Too many North Carolina communities are forced to take on the burden of removing PFAS from their drinking water. The EMC should ensure this burden rests on the polluters, not the downstream utilities. I urge the DEQ to adopt standards for PFAS of 1 part per million. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Suzanne Tenenbaum, followed by Claire Atkins Davis with the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation.
Suzanne is not on the list, or none of the call-in users' hands are up, but Claire is on, so Claire, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Claire Atkins Davis. I'm a representative for the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation, and I'm a part of the Waterkeepers Carolinas. I am a strong proponent of incorporating PFAS standards as a class of 1 and 4 dioxane, as well as E. coli, to address the impacts for our surface water quality and fully support their calls for action. The fact that people are not addressing this issue is extremely discouraging. I'm the head coordinator of our swim guide program that is a weekly ambient monitoring program that informs the public if it is safe to swim in popular swimming areas throughout the Catawba Basin in North Carolina. Swim Guide is a multinational organization that allows the public to access data about any issues relating to bacteria, and they use specifically E. coli and how it can impact public health, which is a better indicator than what is used in our state currently. It's used internationally as well as nationally. Currently, our state only uses fecal coliform, which is not the best indicator parameter for recreational standards. And E. coli is a much better indicator for recreational safety. It is critical to incorporate E. coli as a mandated parameter for E. coli quality health moving forward. To give you some statistics, we have over 59 sites. We have tested weekly every Thursday to give the most up-to-date and relevant data about the quality of our water. It spreads to several demographics as well as social classes. By using this parameter, we have been able to determine over 50 different alerts to be able to discern whether there has been a potential source of pollution, specifically from E. coli bacteria. And then we have also been able to see that over 32,000 people of concerned citizens have voiced opinions about the safety of their water in 2021. So this illustrates.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next speaker I have is Drake Phelps, a member of the Clean Cape Fear, followed by Senator Kurt DeVere.
Drake,
Hi,
you
everyone.
are
Can you hear
unmuted.
me? And you can hear me?
Yes, is this Drake Phelps?
Okay. Yes,
Okay,
this is. Sorry about that.
thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Drake Phelps. I'm a fifth-year PhD candidate at NC State, where I study how PFAS suppress the immune system of fish and humans. I'm also a member of Clean Cape Fear. Like others have mentioned tonight, the EMC must act on PFAS. It is shocking and infuriating that the EMC chose not to act on a class of chemicals that is ubiquitous throughout the waters of this state. I'll try not to repeat what others have said, but I stand with them in saying that we must act. PFAS are dangerous compounds that have been linked to a variety of adverse health outcomes, including cancer, thyroid disease, and suppressed immune systems. As we sit here in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, I don't think I need to tell everyone how important your immune system is. I would strongly recommend that you work to protect human and environmental health by setting surface water standards for these compounds as a class. That standard should be 1 part per trillion as recommended by recent studies. Surface water standards should be set so that this state can hold polluters accountable for poisoning our water. We cannot continue to kick this can down the road. A European study estimated that more than $50 billion are spent there for each year where there is no action on PFAS. These costs are related to remediation of contamination, as well as health costs associated with PFAS exposure. While no equivalent study has been conducted in the United States or in North Carolina, it would not be wrong to assume that North Carolina would spend billions of dollars if we do not act soon. We must act now or we will pay in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, our next person is Senator Kirk DeVere, followed by Nikki Gavinowitz, resident of Baden Lake.
Kirk is not on the list or on the, and no one's hands are up in the call-in users, but Nikki is on. So Nikki, you are now unmuted.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Nikki Giffenowitz. I'm a property owner on Baden Lake on the Yadkin River. We residents on Baden Lake and waters downstream rely heavily on safe water to drink and recreate. 2 facts affect us. The first, the willful negligence of Alcoa Baden Business Park has led to almost a century's accumulation of toxic chemicals in that waterway, notably dissolved cyanide. The second fact is that for several months of the year, the lake is actually a sea of muddy water due to thermal inversion and other climatic events affecting the water's pH. So at any time of the year, there's huge variability in the molecular profile of chemicals dissolved within the lake body. This is common sense, but scientific evidence of the lake's chemistry has never been researched. Therefore, the constantly changing temporal and spatial spectrum of bioavailable cyanide is currently unknowable and potentially threatening. The current proposal for cyanide levels requiring analysis of either free or total cyanide will not capture all the cyanide compounds that could potentially release the free cyanide into the environment during pH and temperature changes. And why is this up for discussion? Well, Alcoa, for instance, would be a significant beneficiary of any easing of testing standards in our waters. The proposed so-called less strict standards would most likely save the massively wealthy global industrial giant the paltry sum of about $100,000 in legal engineering, construction, and consultancy fees. Lower standards enable Alcoa to continue dismissing that their ex-plants dumps are the source of poison levels that affect us, our wildlife, and millions more for generations to come. We call for strict monitoring and testing of both free and total cyanide for scientific validity and accuracy in measuring our water downslope of Alcoa's old Baden plant. Thank you very much for your consideration and for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. All right, the next person I have is Dr. Jennifer Platt, Chatham Economic Development Corporation and Pittsboro Water Quality Task Force, followed by Commissioner John Bonnets, Town of Pittsboro.
Commissioner Harris, this is Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe Senator Kirk DeVere is on.
Oh, okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and bring Senator Kirk DeVere back in, please.
Okay, you are now unmuted, Kirk.
Thank you, and it's good to be with you all this evening. My name is State Senator Kirk Deviere, and I represent the 19th District in North Carolina Senate, which encompasses a majority of Fayetteville and Cumberland County. I want to thank everyone that's attended tonight. This has been a long call, and also especially to those that spoke so passionately tonight. Also want to thank the Department of Environmental Quality for coordinating this public hearing and for their work to this point. The proposed permanent amendments being brought forward and proposed for surface water quality standards take a step forward, but maybe not a big enough step. I was encouraged to see a proposed standard for 1.4 dioxane, although we can go further, but I was disappointed to see that PFAS was left out. And so my question is where were PFAS, why were PFAS standards left out of the regulatory suggestions? This is a question that I'm going to continue to ask at all levels. Again, why were the PFAS standards left out of this regulatory suggestion? There should be a standard. Other states have either regulated or have taken steps to begin regulating PFAS. We cannot wait another 3 years to regulate these harmful forever chemicals. I stand committed and willing to assist in any capacity to ensure we have a standard in place for PFAS. North Carolinians deserve clean water. Thank you for your time tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back now to Dr. Jennifer Platt with the Chatham Economic Development Corporation and Pittsburgh Water Quality Task Force, followed by Commissioner John Bonnets with the town of Pittsburgh.
I spent over a decade of my 30-year career working and advocating for communities in developing countries to get clean water. Little did I dream that one day I would be standing before the state of North Carolina's regulatory body to advocate for those in my very own community. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight, and I urge you to hear our words. I am Dr. Jennifer Platt. I hold my master's in environmental management and policy and my doctorate in public health from UNC's Gilling School of Global Public Health, where I'm also an adjunct professor. I'm here tonight in my capacity as a small business owner and board members of the Chatham EDC and Pittsburgh Water Quality Task Force. I had the dubious honor this spring of being interviewed by The Guardian about their collaborative project with Consumer Reports that tested 120 tap water samples from locations across the United States because our PFAS sample here in Pittsburgh was the highest in the country. As I told The Guardian, I myself am able to use reverse osmosis in my home because I considered it not necessarily affordable, but mandatory because I have a child. However, as I also told the reporter, many residents don't have the means to do what I did. My quote verbatim, here it's about equity in terms of who understands the problem with the water and who's able to deal with it. I join my colleagues tonight to request that the EMC immediately added the entire class of PFAS with a total sum numerical limit for the entire group. We also recommend that the 1,4 dioxane limit be set to keep surface water cancer risks at 1 in a million per the Clean Water Act. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Commissioner John Bonnets with Town of Pittsburgh, followed by Chris Kennedy with the Town of Pittsburgh.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is John Bonnets, and I'm representing my family and my constituents as water drinkers in Pittsburgh. I'm a native North Carolinian and have lived in Pittsburgh for more than 12 years. I have some familiarity with environmental risk and exposure and related concepts. I don't envy your task with this triennial review, but tonight I'm speaking in human terms as a father and water drinker. I'm deeply concerned, and I've lost sleep over the unregulated pollutants in the Haw River, from which Pittsburgh draws our drinking water. My oldest child's blood titers showed us that one of his vaccines was ineffective. Both of my children were struck by a form of encephalopathy. My wife had postpartum preeclampsia and has experienced thyroid issues, and we know many other women in town with similar problems. Each of these things are correlated with exposure to PFAS and other perfluorinated and polyfluorinated compounds. As an elected official, I've also lost sleep over the fact that so many of my neighbors in town cannot afford to buy a reverse osmosis filter. We, as a town board, were forced recently to make the public investments in advanced filtration for the whole town in order to protect our people against pollutants that shouldn't be in our water in the first place. We have so far committed to more than $2.6 million in public investments or expenses to ensure safe water in a town of only 4,500 people. And we're just hoping that the federal government or some other source will help offset these investments so our ratepayers don't have to suffer these costs. As a citizen, I really hope that these standards are reconsidered so as to include PFAS. I also endorse the comments from our town manager, Chris Kennedy, the Haw River Assembly, and Clean Haw River. Commissioners, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your public service and for your time in hearing us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chris Kennedy with the town of Pittsboro, followed by Commissioner Kyle Shipp with the town of Pittsboro.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Kennedy. I am the town manager for the town of Pittsboro. I appreciate the EMC's willingness to hear the public comment that we have this evening. Obviously, there's a lot of passion and a lot of history with this. So we certainly appreciate the willingness to consider PFAS regulations and limits. I come to this less from a scientific side, but more from the practical side as it comes to affordability and what the town of Pittsboro and our customers are being held to because of this. As we go through our budget, if you look at our fiscal year 2021 budget, our entire enterprise fund operating budget was $3.99 million. Over the last few months, our board has appropriated $2.6 million, most of which comes out of our cash reserves because other funding streams are just too slow. And we're really tapped out when it comes to addressing these things. And so we now, with the 1,4-dioxane that's coming down from Greensboro, we're going to be forced to go into additional advanced treatment measures. The $2.6 million is for GAC. Now we're looking at UV. We will likely exceed our entire annual budget just trying to control contaminants that are coming from upstream neighbors. So we urge the EMC to get stronger with their limits, to get stronger with penalties. With the SOC that was agreed upon by Greensboro and the EMC, there was a $5,000 penalty levied for contamination or alleged contamination from December of 2017 until February of this year. $5,000 out of a $140 million budget is equivalent to $143 in Pittsburgh's budget. If I could put UV and advanced treatment in my plant for $143, we'd have done it a decade ago. We appreciate your consideration and thoughtfulness as we proceed forward to active solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I have Commissioner Kyle Shipp with the town of Pittsboro.
Kyle's not on the list and none of the call-in users' hands are raised.
Okay. All right, well, that's the end of my list for registered speakers. So I would like to go back through the beginning in case someone had difficulty getting on and we may not have heard them. And then after that, we will open this up for anybody that needed to add some comments to their original comments and anyone else that would like to speak. So it'll take probably a few minutes to go through these. So I'll start back from the beginning. Keely Wood, is Keely Wood on? Please raise your hand.
Keely is not, and none of the call-in users have their hands up.
All right, Marita Powell.
No, no Marita, no call-in users.
Leona Witchard. If Leona Witchard's on, please raise your hand.
Also a no.
All right, Stephen Pulliam.
No.
All right. Hartwell Carson.
No.
Kemp Burdett.
No.
Jefferson Curry.
No.
Matthew Starr.
Yes, Matthew Starr, you are unmuted.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for taking my comments. I'm Matthew Starr, your Upper Neuse Riverkeeper working for Sound Rivers. I want to reiterate previous comments on adopting an E. coli standard for the entire state, not just picking and choosing winners of Western North Carolina. It is valuable, it is important, and it is needed. We have pollution throughout our state. We know through every year robust sampling that E. coli is polluting our rivers, and our state needs to get with the times and adopt the standard and not just cherry pick Western North Carolina. The rest of North Carolinians, the citizens of the Neuse and Tarpon River basins, deserve to have this standard as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly King.
Kimberly's not on and not in a call-in user hand.
Right, thank you. Stephen Gouletis.
No to Stephen.
Okay. Elizabeth Onan.
No to Elizabeth.
Okay. Adrian Ferris.
No.
Brian Fields.
No. No, Brian.
Deborah Stewart.
No, Deborah.
Linda with Mothers for Safe Air, Safe Drinking Water.
Linda's not on either.
Jamie White.
No.
Dana Sargent.
No.
Mary Scholler.
No.
Brian Beauregard.
No.
Virginia Radcliffe.
No.
Don Williamson.
No.
Steve Ronan.
No.
Tom Vitaglione.
No.
Colleen McDaniel.
No, Colleen.
Okay. Kathy Norton.
No, Kathy.
Marlene Barney.
No.
Richard Reynolds.
No.
Sandy Kayor.
No.
Suzanne Tenenbaum.
No.
And Kyle Ship.
No.
Okay, that takes care of everyone that registered. So now what I would like to do is kind of go back through, so everybody will have to be patient. It's a lot of work on our WebEx host, but if you would like to speak for 2 minutes, press *3, and that way your hand is raised so we can call on you. And when you finish, hit *3 again so your hand can come down. And we will try to go through these as quickly as we can. Please state your name and if your organization, if you're representing an organization. So I will call on our WebEx host to just call out the names and we'll go through those.
So Buddy Henderson has his hand up. He spoke earlier, but Buddy, you're unmuted. If you have anything else. All right. Next is call in user 2 has their hand up. That was Sanja Whittington. Sanja, do you have anything else?
I pretty much elevated. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay, thank you. I just appreciate being listened to before, and just wanted to add the point about the census that's been recently taken, showing that we've got approximately 1 million new residents coming into North Carolina, and just wanted to elevate the importance of making sure that our water is safe and clean, because, you know, we want to present North Carolina in the best light possible, and definitely considering the health impacts and the seriousness of PFAS is what I was elevating, but just wanted to make that note that we have people coming in and we really do want to stand up and be counted with other states that are taking this seriously and showing that we do care about the citizens that have been here and those that are coming in. And thank you for this time.
Thank you.
So David Caldwell has his hand up also. David, do you wish to add anything? You are
Yes,
unmuted
sir.
now.
Yes, sir, and thanks for having me again. I may be a slow talker, but I'm fairly persistent as well. So this is in regard to use classifications. There's another water body of particular concern. The First Broad River is currently a Class C water, but recreation has been increasing rapidly. We have a Carolina Thread Trail in Shelby, a very popular access at Double Shoals, and a greenway coming to Lawndale soon, which is going to include a swimming beach. And by the way, these are low-income communities. So this, from DEQ's most recent water quality planning report regarding the First Broad River. Quote, nearly 26% of the samples collected exceeded 400 colonies fecal coliform bacteria per 100 milliliters of water. Current methodology requires additional bacteriological sampling for streams with concentrations exceeding 400 colonies in more than 20% of the samples. These additional assessments are prioritized such that as monitoring resources become available, the highest priority is given to those streams where the likelihood of full body contact recreation is greatest. No portion of the First Broad River is classified for primary recreation. Therefore, it was not prioritized for additional sampling. End quote. So DEQ decided to stop sampling a river that by definition is impaired. It seems that DEQ needs to start monitoring where people swim and where the problems are, not where the money is. The system for use classification of water bodies is not working and it needs to be updated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Harvey Winthrop. Harvey registered and said that he didn't want to speak. Harvey, you are unmuted. Do you want to speak now? Your hand is
Well,
up.
yeah, I'm just a concerned citizen, but I am concerned that these questions are being asked and nobody from your state panel is answering any of the questions. In fact, I sent a message to Chris and he's not answering. It feels like we're just unloading on you without any explanation for why you came up with these rules in the first place. Can you explain the process to us citizens about how you come up with these rules? Or decisions about avoiding all sorts of regulations that seem to be taken in other states but not here? Where do we get feedback from, please?
Thank you. This is a public hearing and all we're doing tonight is listening from the public. So at the end of this presentation, a screen will come up. So there'll be contact information on that and you can pose your questions. But tonight, our main purpose is just to take comments from the public. Thank you.
Next is Jill Howell. Jill's hand is up. Jill, would you like to speak a little more? You are unmuted now, Jill.
Oh, no, sorry. My hand was just up from earlier. I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joanne Levitan, your hand is up.
Oh, shit.
You are unmuted.
Yes, hi, sorry about that. My son just called in the middle of all this. I really just wanted to amend my comment that I really would like the standards to be 1 part per trillion, not 1 part per million. Excuse me for the profanity. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Bonnets, your hand is up. Would you like to add to what you said before?
No, I apologize. I didn't realize that I'd left it raised. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. No one else has their hand up.
All right, thank you, Peter. With no more comments, I declare the hearing closed. So with that, the hearing record will remain open until August 3rd, 2021. That means that any time between today and close of business on August 3rd, 2021, anyone can submit further comments in writing to Chris Ventilaro. Written comments received by U.S. mail or by email during this time period will be made part of the public record. So if I can ask staff to bring up that contact information. So if you can't bring it up, if you'll at least put it in the box. So if anybody wants to send their comments, they'll know where to reach everyone. After the comment period has ended on August 3rd, the Division of Water Resources staff and I will review the comments and prepare a report of proceedings, including all the comments. Then we will make a recommendation to the Environmental Management Commission. The Commission will make a decision regarding the proposal after consideration of the report of proceedings and our recommendation. As I noted earlier, the Commission may not make substantial changes in the final rules without a renotice and rehearing. If the Commission adopts the proposed rules, then the expected effective date for the rules will be January 1, 2022. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank staff, Chris Ventilaro, Peter Johnson, and Susan Meadows for all your work. They were behind the scenes making this hearing possible. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this online hearing and offering your comments. And I hope you have a good evening. Thank you.